Hi, this is Nancy with On Point TV and Quilting with Nancy. We are continuing our series called The Great Basics, which are based in a book that I wrote. This is the Great Basics book. It is available on our website, onpoint-tv.com. You can purchase the book. There's another book, some patterns, and some other tools. So please take a look if you'd like to follow along with it. In this series so far, we have covered how to pick your fabric and fold your fabric and all of the really great basics that a quilter needs. So if you're just seeing this for the first time, you might want to jump back a few videos to get the entire series of the Great Basics. Last time we were doing the straight line quilting, and we did the stabilizing quilting, and again you can jump back one video to check out what that is. So today we're going to do free motion. I do want to cover the tools that we generally use, and I covered this last time, but let's start it off again. So last time we used our walking foot. This is a walking foot, and this is for my large Hobby 1200 from FAF. For today's video, we will be doing with our free motion foot. And this foot, there's different machines have a different look, but the idea is that this is a spring foot. It will bounce up and down, which means it does not matter what my stitch length is. Everything is determined by how I move the quilt under the foot. Last time we used invisible thread. I don't like to free motion quilt with invisible thread. I find it to be quite the pain. So I recommend that you switch over to a color thread. So today we're going to be using So Fine, which is a polyester thread from Superior Threads. We will be using that in the top. And in the bobbin, we will be using bottom line thread. I've chosen to use the pre-wound versions of the bottom line thread just because I find it easier. You can purchase the bottom line thread in a cone or a spool also. So keep that in mind. I like to use my top stitch needle. Top stitch needles have a larger hole and a larger shaft in the front, so that makes the thread break less often, which I think is a really big bonus. We're ready to start our free motion quilting, and I want to show you in the book what it is that we're going to quilt. So we're going to start by quilting this 9-patch. Keep in mind a 9-patch could be done in the ditch with straight lines going over all of the lines. I think that would be fine. It would look wonderful, but it would take forever. So instead, we're going to do what I call loops. So these are going to be, or bops if you want. We're going to be creating this kind of a curved look around each square, but it's not going to be done one square at a time. In the book, it will take you through the process of how you do that. So let me show you what that looks like in real life. So starting here, here's the pin that I had done for my basting. I'm going to take that out and put that into my little pin box. And I'm going to start this quilting in this corner. I like to start in a corner because I will then continue and go on to the next corner. I'm going to start here, and I am going to bop 1/4 inch away from the line down to this next intersection. So it will create a nice gentle curve line. So starting here, I'm going to start with my tiny stitches as my locking, and then I'm going to bop over to the next seam right there. Oops, my thread did not catch at the very beginning. I will catch that later. So hopefully you'll really be able to see this on the white. Now I'm going to take and bop down the white to this intersection. Then I'm going to go to the other side and back to the intersection, and then back down again. So that's kind of going to look like an S. When I'm away from the seam, I want that seam to be approximately 1/4 inch away. And I say approximately because there's no way to get it perfect when you're doing free motion. Now I'm going to go back up the other side. Now you can really see what it was that I had quilted on the way down. So this is making maybe a figure 8. I'm not sure what you want to call it, but do you see how cool that design is going down and then back up again? And so they crisscross at each intersection. Now I'm going to come around to this next seam. Then I'm going to do that same thing, going down and back. So crisscrossing at the intersection, back to the intersection, down to the bottom, and then back up again. Now I do want to point out that I have been doing this for a long time. So my lines are fairly curved and smooth right here, but keep in mind this takes time. I've been free motion quilting for at least 25 years, and not everybody is going to be able to make them look as smooth as this. So I don't know how that sounds. I don't want you to think that you can't do this, but I do want you to know that I've been doing this for 25 years. So cut yourself a break. Some people do like to do this type of quilting with an invisible thread so that you don't so much see every curve that you make. And if your machine accepts the invisible thread while doing free motion quilting, then I say go for it. I think that you will be very happy with the look. I just know that some machines are not happy with invisible thread, especially when they're doing free motion. So I'm finishing up my last long line. Now I'm going to bop around the entire block till I get back to where I started. Taking my time. This also is a design that can be a stop and start. And what I mean by that is I can stop at an intersection, start and go to the next intersection and stop. Now I can position and go up to the top. So you don't have to go one continuous long line like I tend to do. You can do it one little bit at a time. I skipped this little part here, so I am going to double over that. So let's go up to this last corner. I'm going to go back, catch that, and then come back down again on the same line so it won't be as noticeable. Now I'm in this corner, and there's my next 9 patch. So I'm going to continue to move to that next 9 patch. I'm not going to do the whole one, but I do want you, oops, I got to take that pin out. I do want you to see how you can make one block flow right into another. This is one of my favorite free motion quilting designs, and it's also very good for doing any sampler style block, like that 12-inch sampler block that has square triangles and flying geese and squares. You can do this type of a bopping design around every one of the seams in that kind of a block. So I'm going to stop right here and we'll move on to our next design. So I'm going to cut my thread off. Our next design is going to be for our setting triangles. So the setting triangles are this side of the large triangles on the side of the quilt. And what I'm going to do is kind of a fleur-de-lis design. So I'm going to start in an intersection here, bop to the center, come on up with sort of a leaf look, and then bop over to the next seam. Then we'll be able to go right to our next triangle. And to do this, I want to make a mark at the center of the bottom. So I know where the center at the top is. That's where the point is. So now I'm just going to make this mark. That's going to show me, oops, let me get a little bit of chalk on that pencil. There. So that's going to show me where my center is. When it comes to the triangle, I'm going to take it and I'm going to bop down into this corner. Then I'm going to come up and then back down again. So I need to know where the center of that block is. There it is. All right. So I know where those two centers are, and then I'll go on to that next triangle so you can see how it continues. So starting here, I'm going to start with my tiny stitches. That's my locking stitch. And then I'm going to go right here to the center. So similar to the bopping that we did in the other squares, but this will be a little bit bigger because the block is a little bit bigger. Go to the center and stop. Now I'm going to go up to the point, coming down on my side first, up to the point, and then down on the other side. So now I'm going to meet at that little intersection that I had created, and then go to the next intersection. In the corner triangle, it's going to be a little bit opposite in that I'm going to go to the long part of the triangle, then up to the top, and back down again. And I'm going to turn my quilt now so that I'll be able to go to the next triangle section. Take this pin out. Continue with that long curved design to that intersection. Now going to my center, which is right here. Kind of easy to see the center when you've got a striped fabric this way. Now up to the top. And back down again. And then go to my next intersection of the triangle, and then I would be ready to go on to my next triangle. So I think you understand how that design works. With this type of a quilt though, and a striped fabric, you may choose to stitch on the straight lines, where you can start on this straight line, follow the edge, come back down, follow the edge, come back up, follow the edge, and back down again. And I have drawn that design in the book as an option. Now we're to our setting squares. So with the setting squares, there's two different designs I want to show you. The first is just meandering. I'm just going to continue a meandering design, and there is a drawing of it in the book to help you with the motion. But the idea is I'm going to create these kind of curved heads that oftentimes people think look like a puzzle piece, that intersection of the puzzle pieces. So let me get one stitched here. There, can you see that kind of a curved that it's created? Oh, I'm not sure if you can. I'm going to show you in the book. I don't want you to miss this. Oops, sorry. One more page. Yep, there it is right there. So in the book, this is the meandering design. So you see how these look a little bit like a puzzle piece. I'm going to fill in that entire square with that type of design. As you're a quilter now, you will hear that term meandering a lot. People like to meander around an entire quilt, and it's a great look. But what's really fabulous about it is it gets it done. You don't have to do fancy designs on all of your quilts. And when you're making a quilt, if it's a crib size to a twin size, there is really no reason that you can't quilt it yourself. If you're making a double, queen, or king, then I recommend you start investigating who is going to be your long arm quilter. People with long arm machines are able to quilt those machines quite easily. And the cost for a long arm quilter really depends on the design you choose and who the quilter is. So let me end this off here, and then maybe we'll be able to see it if I pull it out. Can you see the design? There it is. Then you can see how it's got the curves that come here. I'm trying to make my stitch length as equal as possible, and that is all achieved by how fast my machine is going and how fast my hands are moving. So now I want to show you the next design in the blocks. So taking my pin out, I need to make a crisscross in this square to give myself my registration marks. So using my Boheen chalk pencil, I do have a new lead in there now. There we go, now that's working. And I want to crisscross this block. This will give me just the right amount of registration marks that I need for this next design. So first that diagonal, and then the next diagonal. And what it really shows me is the center. Because I'm going to take my design, I'm going to start from the corner, and I'm going to go into the center and then come up to the other side. So I'll have created a half circle, and then I'll create another half circle, another half circle, and then a last half circle that will meet where I started, and they will intersect right there in the middle. So you need to know where your center is. So that's why you need your registration. So starting up here at the top, I'm going to start with my tiny stitches, and now I'm going to make my half circle that'll come all the way around to this corner. And I'm trying to make it as smooth as I can. It's not perfect, but I think it looks pretty good. Now I'm going to do my next half circle, coming down, meeting right there in the intersection in the middle. And then go back up. There's my intersection. So I'm going to have these 4 little petals. Whoops, I think my quilt's getting in the way of the camera. There. And my last petal. And I could take this and go into the next square behind it. But I want you to see, let's see if we can get a better shot. There, you see my petals? And they are not all perfect or all in the exact same shape and size, but they are definitely close enough for me. Next, we're going to work on free motion quilting our borders. Before we go to the borders, I do want to point out a couple of little things that I've talked about previous. So we did talk about how when we're doing our straight lines, that we do a line of stitching near the edge of the border. That's so that when you are free motion quilting your border itself, the fabric doesn't get pulled in. Also, when we talked about our and basting, we talked about needing this extra space here for your hand. So that's why we need the 3 to 4 inches, so that when we're doing free motion quilting, our hand has something to rest on. You can imagine if there was nothing there and you had to hold your quilt just with your fingers to free motion quilt, you would not get a very smooth design. So I'm always going to start at the bottom of the border and quilt my way backwards. I find it easier to quilt into the empty space. So as I fill this space with a design, there's nothing behind me. So I don't have to worry about running over something that I've already stitched. That also means that I'm going to want to pay close attention to where my basting pins are and be sure I take them out before I get too close to them. The first design I want to create, and I'm going to quilt with a white thread now, so I think it'll be a little bit easier for you to see. The first one I want to do is a very simple loop-de-doo, where it will loop to one side and then another. So if you imagine a capital L in cursive writing, it's sort of like that, but you're making them over and over and over again. So I'm going to start a little bit off the quilt. I'll take my tiny stitches to start with, and then I'm going to come on up and make my first long loop. And then curl down, cross the line to my bottom loop. And so it'll just be going back and forth. Now, does it bother me that my loops are not all the exact same size? No, it doesn't bother me. If it does bother you, you could draw some registration lines so that you would know how fat to make each one of your loop-de-loos. But for me, I think it looks pretty cool, and I don't think anybody really notices. I've never seen anybody try to measure the loop-de-loos on the border of a quilt. Now, if you're going to be showing your quilts, that's a whole nother category of free motion quilting. So let me do one more loop and then we'll go to our next design. I always like to stop when possible where there is going to be an intersection. So let me cut that off and see if you can really see that design. There it is, all those wonderful loop-de-loos. The next design is going to be pebbles or circles or even olives, some people call them. And the idea is that I'm going to be doing loop-de-loos, but they will be more circular instead of elongated. And on some of them, I will do a smaller circle within the larger circle, and that's what people call olives. And it just gives it a nice, interesting motion. You don't want to worry about whether or not your pebbles or olives are all the exact same size, because pebbles and olives rarely are. So starting with my small stitches, I'm going to create a circle, and that's about the size of a quarter. Now occasionally I might go to a smaller circle, but I don't want to make it too small, because if I do, it'll take me too long to get the quilting done. Now I'm going to create an olive, and the idea is you make one big circle, then another small circle within it, and then come all the way out and around. So let's see if we can see how that looks. Can you see that? Just barely. Oh, I wish we could get a better shot of that. Can we get closer? Nope. All right. So I'm going to make a few more so that we'll be able to pull some out of the quilt. So again, doing my quarter size pebbles and making some different sizes. And now I'm going to do another olive. So a large circle with a smaller circle inside of it. And it just is an interesting look. So let's come on over here and I'm going to cut my thread. So can we see those loops? There we go. So this is what the olive looks like with the smaller loop inside, and here is another normal bigger loop-de-loo. This is a really nice design to fill an entire border with, so give that one a try. And also know that all of these designs are drawn up for you in the book. So if you purchase the book, you will see the designs drawn up. It will give you a really nice, handy way to reference the designs and know what you want to quilt on your quilt. Having said that, I could easily think of about 10 to 15 other designs I could do in any place on this quilt. There's so many designs. Start buying some quilt books there's so many really great free motion quilting books out there with so many really cool designs. Go to some quilt shows. At quilt shows, you can see a lot of fabulous quilts with wonderful designs. Bring a notebook so that you can draw those designs. So when you come home, practicing drawing the designs is a really great step before you jump into the free motion quilting. So at this point, your quilt should be all quilted. Once your quilt is quilted, it's time to put a sleeve, a label, and a binding on. And we'll be doing that in our next episode. If you have any questions, you can contact me at quiltingwithnancy@gmail.com. I'll try to answer your questions as quickly as I can. If you want to purchase the book, you can go to our website. That's www.onpoint-tv. Have a great day.